Dog won't stop barking at dark house on CPS outage map. What rescuers found inside shocked everyone. The emergency alert tone shattered the 3 a.m. silence of Sarah Collins' bedroom. She was awake before the second beep, reaching for her phone with practiced efficiency. Max, her Belgian Malinois, was already alert at the foot of the bed, his ears perked forward, eyes locked on her face. "Collins," she answered, voice clear despite the hour. "It's Torres. We've got a situation with the blackout in East Atlanta. Power company's outage map shows every property affected except one house on Elmwood Drive. Completely dark on their system." Sarah frowned. "And this requires K9 at 3 in the morning because the neighbors called about screaming from inside. But when patrol arrived, the place looked abandoned. Officers conducted a perimeter check. Nothing visible. But get this, the property's been officially vacant for 2 years." Sarah was already pulling on her tactical pants. So someone's illegally occupying a foreclosed property, still not seeing the urgency. The responding officers reported their equipment malfunction near the house. Radios, flashlights, everything electronic just died. And Collins, they said they heard something inside, something that didn't sound human. Max watched intently as Sarah strapped on her duty belt. 6 years as partners had taught him to read her body language perfectly. Her shoulders had tensed. "We'll be there in 20, she said, ending the call. Outside, Atlanta lay in patches of darkness and emergency lights. The summer storm had taken out 3 substations, leaving half the city without power. As Sarah navigated her department SUV through intersections with dead traffic signals, Max stood balanced in his customized compartment, scanning the passing streets with practiced vigilance. "What do you think, partner? Another wild goose chase?" Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror. Max tilted his head, his amber eyes reflecting the dashboard lights. The address led them to a once affluent neighborhood, now sliding into disrepair. Officer Jensen waited at the curb, his patrol car's spotlight illuminating a Victorian house set back from the street. The property seemed to swallow the light, its boarded windows and overgrown yard, a stark contrast to the maintained homes around it. "Glad you're here, Collins," Jensen said, relief evident in his voice. "Something's off about this place." Sarah studied the structure while Jensen briefed her. The house stood 3 stories tall, with a wraparound porch and what appeared to be a separate cellar entrance on the side. Despite its abandonment, Sarah noted security cameras mounted discreetly under the eaves, new equipment on a decaying building. "You checked the power company records?" she asked. "That's the strange part," Jensen replied, pulling up a tablet displaying the CPS outage map. "Every property on this grid is registered in their system, except this one. It's just blank. Like it doesn't exist." Sarah's attention shifted as Max suddenly tensed beside her, a low growl rumbling in his chest. She'd worked with enough K9s to recognize the difference between alerting to a human presence and sensing danger. This was the latter. "What is it, boy?" she murmured, unclipping his tactical lead. Max's training was to stay close unless commanded otherwise, but his entire body was rigid with focus. The moment Sarah released the restraint, Max bolted toward the house, stopping at the cellar doors. He didn't bark. Instead, he began pawing frantically at the padlocked entrance, then turned to look at Sarah with an intensity she'd rarely seen. "Max, come," she commanded firmly. For the first time in their partnership, Max didn't obey. He remained fixed at the cellar doors, now emitting a high-pitched whine that raised the hair on Sarah's arms. "I've never seen him disobey a direct command," she said, unholstering her weapon. "Something's very wrong here." Sarah approached cautiously, signaling Jensen to cover her. As she neared the cellar entrance, her flashlight flickered and died. Her radio crackled with static, then went silent. Even her watch stopped. "Electronics malfunction just like you reported," she called back to Jensen. "Call for backup and a warrant. Now." As Jensen retreated to his vehicle, Sarah knelt beside Max, who was still fixated on the cellar doors. "Easy, partner," she whispered, running a hand along his back to feel the rigid muscles beneath his fur. "We'll get in there, I promise." While they waited for the warrant, Sarah conducted a closer inspection of the property's perimeter. Behind overgrown bushes, she discovered a sophisticated junction box connected to underground cables. Nothing like standard residential wiring. The technology looked military-grade, with cooling systems and what appeared to be independent power generation. "This isn't some squatter operation," she muttered to herself. Max had followed her, staying unusually close to her legs. The dog's behavior troubled her more than anything else. In 6 years together, through shootouts, hostage situations, and disaster zones, she'd never seen him this disturbed. The backup arrived with Lieutenant Rivera, who handed Sarah the emergency warrant. "You sure about this, Collins? Looks like a waste of departmental resources to me." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "My partner doesn't false alert, sir, and he's never acted like this before. There's something in that cellar." Rivera sighed. "Your call. But if this turns out to be rats or a homeless camp, it's on your record." The bolt cutters made quick work of the padlock. As the cellar doors swung open, a wave of cold, antiseptic-scented air rushed out, jarringly out of place in an abandoned house. "Police! Anyone inside, make yourself known!" Sarah called out, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to reveal concrete steps leading down. Max barked once, sharp, urgent, then started down the stairs without waiting for command. Sarah followed immediately, aware of the protocol breach, but trusting her partner's instincts over procedure. The beam of light revealed a scene that stopped Sarah in her tracks. The cellar had been converted into a high-tech command center. Multiple servers hummed along one wall, monitors displayed surveillance feeds from throughout the city. A sophisticated communications array occupied the center of the room. "What the hell?" Rivera whispered from behind her. Max ignored the equipment, heading straight for a steel door at the rear of the room. He scratched at it frantically, whining with increasing desperation. Sarah approached the door, noting the electronic keypad lock. "We need a tech team in here now," she called over her shoulder, "and get me something to override this lock." On one of the monitors, a document caught her attention. Moving closer, she read the header, Operation Lighthouse, Acquisition Schedule. Below was a list of names, ages, and locations, all girls between 13 and 17. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed, scanning the list. "These are missing persons cases, some from our jurisdiction, others from across state lines." Max's whining had intensified to a fevered pitch. Sarah turned back to the door, determination hardening her features. "Stand back," she ordered, before firing at the electronic lock. The mechanism sparked and died. Sarah pulled the door open, weapon raised, and felt her blood run cold. The small room beyond contained medical equipment arranged around a central gurney. Restraints hung open, recently used. Surgical tools lay carefully arranged on a stainless steel tray. A camera was positioned overhead, its red light blinking steadily. But what made Sarah's stomach twist was the wall of photographs. Dozens of young girls, their images arranged in neat rows, each marked with either a green check or a red X. She recognized 3 faces from recent Amber alerts. "Get CSU in here now," she ordered, her voice tight, "and contact FBI human trafficking. This isn't just a local case." Max had moved to a section of wall that appeared solid. He was pawing at it frantically, his nails scraping against the painted concrete. Sarah approached, running her hands along the surface. A seam, almost imperceptible, suggested a hidden door. "We need to get this open," she called to the officers now filing into the main room. Her phone vibrated. Service had returned once she'd moved away from the equipment. A text message appeared from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have come, Officer Collins. You have no idea what you've stepped into. Walk away now, or neither you nor your dog will live to see morning." Sarah looked down at Max, still desperately trying to access whatever lay beyond that wall. In 6 years together, they'd faced death threats, armed suspects, and building collapses. But something about this case felt different, darker, with tendrils reaching into places she couldn't yet see. She knelt beside her partner, placing a steadying hand on his back. "We're not walking away, are we, Max?" The dog turned to her, his intelligent eyes meeting hers with unwavering resolve. In that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that whatever waited behind that wall would change everything. For them, for the department, perhaps for the entire city. And there was no going back. The hidden door gave way with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in dim blue emergency lighting. Sarah's tactical flashlight cut through the shadows as she led the breach team forward, Max padding silently at her side. The antiseptic smell grew stronger, mixing now with something else: fear, sweat, human suffering. "Atlanta PD, call out if you can hear us." Sarah's voice echoed against concrete walls. No response came, but Max's behavior shifted instantly. The frantic energy transformed into the focused intensity of a trained detection dog who had found his target. He moved with purpose now, leading Sarah deeper into the corridor. "Collins, we should wait for FBI support," Lieutenant Rivera cautioned from behind her. "People could be dying in here, sir," Sarah replied without slowing. "Max has a live scent." The corridor opened into a larger space that stopped the entire team in their tracks. 6 glass enclosures lined the walls, each the size of a small bedroom. 5 stood empty, their doors ajar, monitoring equipment dark. But the last chamber, the one Max now stood before whining softly, contained a hospital bed with restraints. And on it lay a teenage girl, unconscious, connected to an IV drip. "Get medical in here now." Sarah holstered her weapon and rushed to the chamber, punching the emergency release button. The glass door slid open with the same pneumatic hiss. The girl couldn't have been more than 15. Her arms bore needle marks, and her wrists showed ligature bruises from the restraints. A medical monitoring bracelet encircled her ankle, blinking steadily. "She's breathing," Sarah confirmed, checking her pulse. "But barely." While paramedics rushed in, Sarah allowed Max to continue his search. The dog moved methodically through the facility, alerting at various points. A refrigerated cabinet containing labeled blood samples, a computer station with multiple hard drives, and finally, a disposal chute marked biological waste. "We need to seal off this entire scene," Sarah instructed the evidence techs, now filtering into the space. "Every sample, every record, every fingerprint. Whatever happened here, we need to know who was involved." 4 hours later, dawn broke over Atlanta as Sarah stood in the mobile command center established outside the house. The FBI's human trafficking task force had arrived, taking jurisdiction, but requesting Sarah and Max remain as liaisons due to their discovery of the facility. Special Agent Michaels, a veteran trafficking investigator with sharp eyes and a perpetual frown, spread crime scene photos across the table. "We've identified the victim as Zoe Richardson, reported missing from Marietta 3 weeks ago," Michaels said. "Doctors say she was kept sedated with a cocktail of drugs similar to what we've seen in high-end trafficking operations. The sophistication of this facility is unprecedented." Sarah studied the evidence board, where technicians had begun mapping connections. "What about the other chambers? There were 5 empty pods in there." "That's what worries us," Michaels replied grimly. "Evidence suggests they were recently occupied. We found traces of 5 distinct DNA profiles, all female, all likely adolescents based on preliminary testing." "They knew we were coming," Sarah said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "They cleared out, left Zoe behind because moving her might have killed her." Max lay at Sarah's feet, eyes alert despite the hours without rest. She absently reached down to stroke his head, a habit that centered both of them during difficult cases. "There's something else," Michaels said, pulling up images on his tablet. "The servers were wiped remotely the moment you breached the facility, but our tech team recovered fragments from the backup system." He turned the screen toward Sarah. The partial document showed a department letterhead she recognized immediately: Atlanta PD Internal Affairs. "This was a sanctioned operation?" Sarah asked, disbelief coloring her voice. "Not officially," Michaels replied, "but someone with high-level clearance was feeding information to these people. Someone who knew patrol patterns, investigation protocols, and how to keep this place off the grid. The implication hung in the air between them. Someone in her department, someone she might know, work with, trust, was involved in this nightmare. "I need names," Sarah said, her voice hardening. "We're working on it, but Collins—" Michaels leaned closer, lowering his voice. "If there is department involvement, you need to watch your back. That text message you received wasn't an empty threat." Sarah's phone vibrated with an incoming call. Captain Torres, her direct supervisor. "I need to take this," she said, stepping outside the command center. The morning air was thick with humidity as storm clouds gathered again on the horizon. Sarah answered, keeping her voice professional despite her exhaustion. "Collins, what the hell is going on?" Torres demanded without preamble. "I've got the commissioner breathing down my neck about some joint operation with the FBI that nobody authorized." "Sir, we discovered a human trafficking operation based in that house on Elmwood. One victim recovered alive, evidence of at least 5 others recently moved." A pause. "And why wasn't I informed immediately?" "Everything happened fast, sir. FBI took jurisdiction due to cross-state trafficking indicators." Another pause, longer this time. "I want you back at the station. Now. Full debrief." "Sir, I'm still actively working the—" "That's an order, Collins. Leave the dog with the K9 unit supervisor. I want you alone." The call ended before she could respond. Sarah stared at her phone, unease spreading through her chest. In 8 years with Atlanta PD, Torres had never asked her to separate from Max during an active investigation. She returned to the command center to find Michaels reviewing security footage recovered from the house. "I've been called back to the station," she told him quietly. "Alone." Michaels looked up sharply. "By whom?" "Captain Torres, my direct superior." The FBI agent's expression darkened. "Don't go, not yet." He pulled up a personnel file on his tablet. "We've been cross-referencing department access credentials with activity around these trafficking cases." Torres's name came up. Sarah felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. "That's impossible. He's been my mentor since I joined the force. His security credentials were used to access files on every girl we believe came through this facility," Michaels continued. "Either he's involved, or someone has compromised his access." Before Sarah could process this, Max suddenly stood, hackles raised. A low growl rumbled in his chest, the same warning he'd given at the house hours earlier. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her weapon. "What is it, boy?" Max faced the command center's rear exit, body rigid with alertness. Through the window, Sarah spotted a dark SUV pulling up behind the police barricade, its windows tinted beyond legal limits. "Michaels," she said quietly, "we've got unknown visitors." The FBI agent signaled his team as 2 men emerged from the SUV. They wore tactical gear without identification markers, private security, not law enforcement. "Federal agents!" Michaels called out, moving toward the door with his credentials displayed. "This is a secured crime scene." Yabe, the first bullet caught Michaels in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The second shattered the command center window. "Down!" Sarah shouted, pulling Michaels behind a desk as gunfire erupted outside. Through her radio, she heard officers returning fire, calling for backup. Max stayed low, training overriding his instinct to charge toward danger. Sarah reached for her phone to call for additional support when a text message appeared on the screen. "Final warning, Collins. The next bullet won't miss. Walk away now." The gunfire ceased as suddenly as it had begun. Through the window, Sarah saw the attackers retreating to their vehicle, moving with military precision despite the police presence. "They're not even trying to hide," she said incredulously, applying pressure to Michael's wound. "It's like they don't fear consequences." "Because they don't." Michaels grimaced through pain. "Look." He nodded toward the roadblock, where officers had taken cover during the assault. Behind them, unmarked police cars had arrived, and the officers emerging were directing their weapons not at the retreating SUV, but at the FBI personnel. "Those aren't real officers," Sarah realized aloud. "They're with the traffickers." Max growled again, sensing her tension. In that moment, Sarah made her decision. We need to disappear, she told Michaels, helping him to his feet. If Torres is compromised, the station isn't safe. These people have infiltrated the department at multiple levels. There's a secure FBI safe house in Buckhead, Michaels said through gritted teeth. My partner knows the protocol if I go dark. Sarah nodded, her mind racing through options. They'll track my vehicle, my phone, my service weapon. Take my backup piece, Michaels offered, revealing an ankle holster. And my credentials. They'll get you past checkpoints. Outside, the chaos had escalated into a standoff between FBI agents and the disguised officers. The distraction provided their only window for escape. Max, come, Sarah commanded. The dog was instantly at her side, alert but calm, his training for high-risk extractions now in full effect. They slipped out the command center's side exit as the first raindrops of a new storm began to fall. Sarah supported Michaels with one arm, her other hand on Max's tactical harness. If what we found in that house is just one part of a larger operation, Sarah said quietly, then we've stumbled onto something bigger than either of our agencies is prepared for. And if your captain is involved, Michaels added grimly, then the rot goes deeper than anyone suspected. Sarah thought of the girls whose DNA had been found in those empty chambers, children who had been processed through that facility like merchandise, with the protection or complicity of people sworn to protect them. Max found this place for a reason, she said, determination hardening her voice, and we're going to follow this through, no matter where it leads. The city spread out before them, its skyline partially obscured by storm clouds. Somewhere within it, the trafficking operation continued. Somewhere within it, 5 girls remained in captivity. And somewhere within the Atlanta Police Department, officers who had pledged to serve and protect were betraying that oath in the most fundamental way possible. Sarah felt Max press against her leg, his solid presence a reminder of the one partnership she could trust without question. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Rain pounded against the windows of the FBI safe house, a nondescript apartment in a luxury high-rise in Buckhead. Sarah stood at the window, watching lightning illuminate the Atlanta skyline as an emergency medical technician. A friend of Michael's, who'd come without questions, finished bandaging the agent's shoulder. You're lucky, the medic said, packing away his supplies. Clean through and through, no major vessels hit. Max lay at the apartment's entrance, his posture alert, despite 20 hours without rest. He hadn't left his self-appointed guard position since they'd arrived. He needs to rest, Michaels observed, nodding toward the dog. So do you, Collins. Sarah shook her head. Not until we figure out our next move. She turned from the window. And not until you tell me exactly what the FBI knows about department involvement in this trafficking operation. Michaels sighed, dismissing the medic with a nod of thanks. When the door closed, he reached for a secure laptop. 6 months ago, we started tracking a new player in international trafficking. They called themselves the Lighthouse, supposedly because they guided girls to better shores. High-end operation catering exclusively to wealthy clients. But unlike most trafficking rings, they specialized in American girls, suburban middle-class victims who wouldn't normally be vulnerable to traditional trafficking methods. He pulled up a map showing disappearances across the southeastern United States. The pattern was unlike anything we'd seen before. These girls weren't runaways or high-risk youth. They were taken from stable homes, good neighborhoods, loving families. The only commonality we found was that each disappearance was preceded by some form of local police interaction. A traffic stop involving the family car, a noise complaint at the home, a school resource officer referral. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. They were using police resources to identify targets. Exactly. When we started looking at departmental access logs, we found unauthorized searches of driver's license photos, school records, social media accounts, all running through law enforcement databases, all targeting girls between 13 and 17. And these searches traced back to APD. Among others, we've identified similar patterns in Savannah, Charlotte, Birmingham, all major departments in the southeast. But Atlanta is the hub, the operations command center. Sarah paced the small living room, processing this information. How deep does it go? How many officers are involved? Michaels hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. The digital trail suggests at least 15 officers with direct involvement, but there could be more providing passive support or looking the other way. Names, Sarah demanded. I need to know who I can trust. We were building the case carefully. Too many previous internal investigations have fallen apart because we moved too soon. Michaels pulled up a file. But after today's events, you deserve to know. The list that appeared on screen made Sarah's stomach turn. Lieutenant Rivera, Sergeant Wells from Vice, 3 officers from her own K9 unit, and at the top, Captain Daniel Torres. I've worked with these people for years, she said, voice hollow. Torres recruited me personally for K9 Division. He was at my academy graduation. That's how they operate, Michael said grimly. Deep cover, long-term infiltration. The Lighthouse isn't just a trafficking ring, it's an organization with patience and resources. Sarah's mind flashed back to the moment Torres had ordered her to leave Max behind and come alone to the station. If she had obeyed. A memory surfaced suddenly, Torres introducing her to Max 6 years earlier. She'd been assigned to patrol then, showing promise but still new to the force. I've been watching your work, Collins, Torres had said. You've got instincts this department needs. How would you feel about K9 Division? She'd been surprised. K9 officers typically had more seniority, but Torres had insisted she had a natural talent, arranging her transfer and personally overseeing her training with Max. Had he been grooming her even then? Was there a reason he'd wanted her specifically paired with Max? Collins? Michael's voice pulled her back to the present. You went somewhere just now. Sarah crossed to where Max lay vigilant. She knelt beside him, running her hand along his back. I'm wondering if I was chosen for a reason. If Torres had plans for me in their operation. Michaels considered this. It's possible. Your record shows rapid promotion, special assignments. Were you ever asked to handle unusual tasks? Surveillance? Evidence processing outside normal channels? Sarah started to shake her head, then stopped. 2 years ago. There was a series of cases Torres assigned me personally. Runaway teens he wanted me to track using Max. Said the families had requested our unit specifically because of our success rate. The realization hit her like physical pain. We found those girls, all of them, and within months they were reported missing again. They were identifying which girls could be taken without raising immediate alarms, Michaels concluded. Girls already known to police as runaways. Max shifted position, pressing his body against Sarah's leg as if sensing her distress. The contact grounded her, focusing her thoughts through the horror of what they were uncovering. Why didn't I see it? She whispered. Because good people don't look for evil in those they trust, Michaels replied. That's how predators operate. They count on it. Thunder cracked outside, closer now. Max's ears twitched toward the sound, but his focus remained on Sarah. There's something else you should know, Michaels said after a moment. Something about Max. Sarah looked up sharply. What about him? Michaels pulled up another file. When we started investigating the Lighthouse, we looked into every aspect of the departments involved, including K9 programs. Most trafficking dogs are trained for specific scent profiles, drugs, explosives, human remains. But Max's training records show something unusual. The document on screen showed training protocols Sarah had never seen before. He was part of an experimental program, Michaels continued, dual-purpose detection with an emphasis on physiological stress markers. He's not just trained to find people, he's specifically calibrated to detect the biochemical signatures of trauma and fear. Sarah's hand stilled on Max's fur. That's not standard K9 training. No, it's not. It's cutting-edge work, developed for locating trafficking victims specifically. Only 3 dogs in the country have successfully completed the program. And Torres got one of them assigned to me? Sarah struggled to process the implications. Why? If he's involved in trafficking, why give me a tool specifically designed to uncover it? Michaels leaned forward. Because he never expected Max to turn on them. The facility where these dogs were trained has connections to the Lighthouse. They were supposed to be controllable, to find victims when their handlers directed, but ignore specific locations and scent profiles when commanded. But Max doesn't ignore anything, Sarah said, a dawning realization in her voice. He's never responded to override commands. Exactly. From what our sources tell us, he was considered a program failure, too independent, too focused on the victims regardless of handler input. Most canines can be directed to ignore certain targets, like police dogs trained to detect drugs but ignore their handler's scent. Max couldn't be trained to selectively ignore human distress. Sarah looked down at her partner with new understanding. All those times he'd pushed beyond her commands, insisted on searching areas she'd been ready to clear. He'd been following a deeper training than she'd known existed. That's why he wouldn't leave the house on Elmwood, she said softly. Even when I called him back, he knew someone was in distress inside. And that's why Torres wanted you to leave him behind today. Max is the one variable in their operation they can't control. Michaels grimaced as he shifted his injured shoulder. They underestimated the bond between you. They thought Max's handler focus training would override his victim detection instincts. Sarah's mind raced back through dozens of cases where Max had performed beyond expectations. The missing child, found in an abandoned refrigerator after other canines had cleared the area. The trafficking victim, discovered in a hidden compartment of a tractor trailer that had already passed inspection. The elderly Alzheimer's patient, located miles from her searched area, huddled in a storm drain. He wasn't just doing his job, Sarah murmured. He was fighting his programming. Outside, the storm reached its peak, rain lashing against the windows. Sarah felt something shift inside her, grief transforming into cold, focused rage. For years, she'd unknowingly been a pawn in their game, while her partner had been silently fighting against the very system that created him. "We need to find those girls," she said, rising to her feet, "and we need to burn the lighthouse to the ground." Michaels nodded, pulling up a secure messaging system. "My partner's been building a shadow task force, agents we can trust absolutely. No departmental connections, no local ties." "That's not enough," Sarah countered. "We need to move now, while they think we're in hiding. Max can find those girls if we get him close enough." "Close enough to what?" "We don't know where they've taken them." Sarah turned back to the window, watching lightning illuminate the city. "Yes, we do. The house was just a processing center. Think about it. The girls were moved hours before we arrived, but they left critical evidence behind. They evacuated in a hurry. Because they had somewhere secure to take the girls," Michaels followed her reasoning. "Somewhere they'd already prepared." Sarah pointed to the Atlanta skyline. "The Lighthouse. It's not just their code name. They're hiding in plain sight." Understanding dawned on Michaels's face. "The Reynolds Tower, the new development on the riverfront, built by Connor Reynolds, Atlanta's Philanthropist of the Year," Sarah confirmed. "Known for his charitable foundation supporting at-risk youth." "The perfect cover," Michael said, "and the building literally functions as a lighthouse, that rotating beacon on top for artistic purposes." Sarah turned to Max, who had risen to his feet, sensing the change in energy. "What do you think, partner? Ready to finish what you started?" Max's eyes held hers, intelligent and unwavering. In them, Sarah saw the same determination she felt, a shared purpose that transcended training, duty, and even the badge she'd once been so proud to wear. "They made you to find victims when told," she said softly to Max, "but they never expected you to keep looking when told to stop." The storm outside began to subside, the pounding rain softening to a steady rhythm. Sarah Collins and her canine partner stood in silent communion, their bond forged by years of trust, now strengthened by revelation. Tomorrow they would hunt. Dawn broke over Atlanta as Sarah studied the Reynolds Tower through binoculars from an abandoned office building across the river. The sleek glass and steel structure dominated the skyline, its upper floors crowned by a rotating light installation that swept across the city each night, a lighthouse in plain sight. "Delivery trucks have been arriving since 4 a.m., she reported to Michaels, who monitored security feed intercepts on his laptop. All with Reynolds Foundation logos, but none of the drivers match standard delivery protocols. Military precision, Michaels agreed. Look at their formation, coordinated arrivals, designated security points. These aren't delivery drivers, they're operatives. Sarah lowered the binoculars, her jaw tight. Something big is happening today. Max sat alertly at her side, his focus unbroken on the tower since their arrival. Twice he had growled, not at any visible threat, but at specific moments when blacked-out SUVs had entered the building's underground garage. "Our Shadow Task Force is in position," Michaels said. 6 agents, all operating completely outside official channels, but we're still outnumbered at least 5 to 1. Numbers won't matter if we can access their secure floors. Sarah returned to the improvised operation table where blueprints of the tower were spread out. Reynolds occupies the top 8 floors as his personal domain, private elevator access, biometric security, the works. Which is exactly why a frontal assault would be suicide, Michaels argued. We need more intelligence, more resources. What we need is already here, Sarah interrupted, placing her hand on Max's back. He can get us past their security systems. He can find those girls. No offense to your partner, Collins, but even the best K9 can't hack biometric scanners or disarm guards. Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming message from an encrypted channel. Agent Diaz, Michael's partner, who'd been coordinating their shadow operation. Facial recognition just picked up Torres, entering the tower's main lobby, the message read. He's accompanied by 2 of the officers from your list. They're armed and in civilian clothes. Sarah showed the message to Michaels. They're bringing all their assets in. Whatever is happening today, it's significant enough that Torres is there personally. Or they're still hunting for us, Michaels countered. Either way, our window is closing. Sarah knelt before Max, running her hands along his tactical vest to check each piece of equipment. The service tunnels connect to the main ventilation system. Max and I can access the secure floors through the maintenance shafts. And then what? You'll be trapped inside with hostiles on all sides. We locate the victims, signal their positions to your team, then create a diversion for extraction. Sarah checked her borrowed sidearm. This isn't a negotiation, Michaels. Those girls have been in there for 18 hours already. You know what happens in the first 24 hours of trafficking operations. The grim reality hung between them. Initial processing, drugging, documentation, and the beginning of psychological conditioning typically occurred within the first day of captivity. Michaels sighed, knowing she was right. Take this. He handed her a small device that resembled a key fob. It's an electronic skeleton key. Experimental FBI tech. It might get you through some of their security doors. Sarah secured it in her vest pocket. If we're not out or haven't made contact in 3 hours, assume we've been compromised and proceed with your backup plan. The backup plan is considerably less surgical, Michaels warned. Federal tactical teams, helicopters, the works. Then we'd better not fail. Sarah turned to Max. Ready, partner. The dog's intense focus was all the answer she needed. 20 minutes later, Sarah and Max moved silently through the service tunnels beneath Reynolds Tower. Decades ago, these passages had connected multiple buildings to a central steam plant. Now they served as conduits for fiber optic cables and utilities, and as an unmonitored entry point to the building's foundation. Sarah's tactical gear had been exchanged for maintenance coveralls with authentic-looking Reynolds Building Services patches. Max wore a modified service dog vest that concealed his police insignia. To casual observation, they would appear to be part of the building's maintenance team with a service animal. The first real challenge came at the service elevator, a key card scanner-controlled access. "Let's see if Michael's toy works," Sarah murmured, pressing the skeleton key against the scanner. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the light flashed green and the elevator doors slid open. Sarah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Good start. They rode to the 30th floor, the highest the service elevator would go. From there, they would need to access the executive elevator bank to reach Reynolds's domain above. The doors opened onto a utility corridor. Sarah checked her watch. 7:15 a.m. The regular office workers wouldn't arrive for another 45 minutes, but security patrols would be active. "Find," she whispered to Max, the command that would activate his search protocol without triggering his alert behavior. Max moved forward purposefully, leading Sarah through the corridor toward the central part of the building. His body language was relaxed but focused. To anyone watching security feeds, he would appear to be a well-trained service dog accompanying maintenance personnel. They encountered 2 security guards en route to the executive elevator bank. Sarah kept her head down, muttering about checking the HVAC system on 42 into a handheld radio as they passed. The disguise worked. The guards barely glanced at them. The executive elevator bank presented a more significant challenge: biometric scanners and a security desk manned by an alert guard in a tailored suit that didn't quite conceal the bulge of a shoulder holster. Sarah's mind raced through options. A direct approach would trigger an immediate response. The maintenance ruse wouldn't work at this security level. Max solved the problem for her. Without warning, he stiffened, then collapsed onto his side, limbs twitching in what appeared to be a seizure. "Help!" Sarah cried out, genuine alarm in her voice. "My dog! Something's wrong with him!" The security guard rose from his desk, momentarily distracted by the medical emergency. "Ma'am, this area is restricted. Please," Sarah begged, real tears welling in her eyes. "He's my service dog. He detects my seizures. I need to get him to the veterinary clinic on 42. The guard hesitated, his training warring with basic human compassion as he watched Max convulse on the polished marble floor. "That's an executive floor. You need clearance." "Reynolds Foundation approved his treatment program," Sarah pressed, pulling out a forged ID card Michaels had prepared. "Please, he'll die." The moment of indecision was all they needed. The guard stepped forward to examine the ID, bringing him within reach. Sarah's strike was swift and precise, a pressure point technique that rendered him unconscious without leaving marks. Max was on his feet instantly, the seizure performance forgotten. "Good boy," Sarah whispered, dragging the guard behind his desk. She used his security card and pressed his limp thumb against the biometric scanner. The executive elevator doors slid open silently. Once inside, Sarah pressed the button for the 45th floor, the lowest of Reynolds's private domain. As the elevator ascended, she activated the comms device hidden in her ear. "Eagle's Nest, this is Shepard. We've breached the perimeter and are ascending to target floors. Beginning Phase 2. Michael's voice responded through the earpiece. "Confirmed, Shepard. Be advised, we're seeing increased activity at all entrance points. Multiple SUVs arriving with security personnel." "Roger that. Maintain position." The elevator slowed as it approached the 45th floor. Sarah crouched beside Max, her hand on his tactical harness. "Find them," she whispered. "Find the girls." The doors opened onto luxury that bordered on obscenity. Marble floors, art pieces worth millions, panoramic views of Atlanta through floor-to-ceiling windows, but the opulence couldn't mask the clinical efficiency beneath the surface. Sarah noted surveillance cameras disguised as light fixtures, motion sensors embedded in decorative panels, and the subtle bulges of concealed weapons on the 2 men positioned at the far end of the reception area. Before they could spot her, Sarah pressed the button for the 48th floor. The doors closed just as one of the men turned toward the elevator. "Too many eyes on 45, she reported quietly, moving up to locate a better insertion point. The 48th floor opened onto what appeared to be a residential space, a massive open-concept living area that combined mid-century modern furniture with industrial design elements. Unlike the reception area below, this floor seemed deserted. Sarah and Max moved silently into the space, keeping to the shadows along the walls. A massive desk occupied one corner, its surface dominated by multiple monitors displaying security feeds from throughout the building. "Jackpot," Sarah whispered, sliding into the chair. The system was actively logged in. Whoever monitored these feeds had stepped away momentarily. Sarah quickly scanned the displays, identifying security patrol patterns, camera blind spots, and most importantly, a schematic of the building's upper floors. What she saw on one monitor stopped her breath. A large room on the 47th floor had been converted into what could only be described as a showroom. 5 glass enclosures, similar to those in the house on Elmwood but larger, more elegantly appointed, stood in a semicircle. Inside each, a teenage girl sat motionless, dressed in white, their expressions vacant. "Found them," Sarah reported, her voice tight. 47th floor, East Wing, 5 victims, all appear to be drugged but conscious. Max suddenly tensed beside her, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Sarah looked up from the monitors to see a door opening across the living area. She slid from the chair and ducked behind a massive sectional sofa, pulling Max with her. Connor Reynolds himself strode into the room, followed by Captain Torres. The billionaire philanthropist looked nothing like his charitable foundation photos. In person, his eyes were cold, his movements precise and predatory. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. "The clients are arriving at noon," Reynolds was saying. "I want everything perfect. These buyers are paying 8 figures per acquisition. The security breach at the processing facility has been contained," Torres responded. "Collins and her dog are still at large, but they won't get far. Every law enforcement agency in the southeast has their description. And the FBI agent, wounded but alive. Our sources at the Bureau say he's gone dark, operating outside official channels." Reynolds stopped at the window, gazing out at the city he'd helped build. "This is unfortunate timing. We've never had a shipment of this quality before. These girls represent over 50 million in potential revenue." "The auction proceeds as planned," Torres assured him. "We've doubled security on all floors. Nothing gets in or out without biometric clearance." "What about the K9? Collins's dog has already compromised one facility." Torres hesitated. "Max was supposed to be controllable. His original programming included override commands that should have prevented him from alerting to our operations." "Yet here we are," Reynolds replied coldly. "Find them, and when you do, I want both Collins and that animal eliminated permanently." The men moved toward the elevator, continuing their conversation as they exited the floor. When the doors closed behind them, Sarah released a shaky breath. "Eagle's Nest. Situation critical," she whispered into her comm. "Confirmed human trafficking auction scheduled for noon today. 5 victims on 47th floor. Reynolds and Torres are on site personally supervising." "Understood," Michaels responded. "How heavily guarded are the victims?" Sarah recalled the security feed. 2 armed guards visible in the display room, likely more nearby. The girls appear sedated but ambulatory. "We need to move up our timeline. Local law enforcement has been mobilizing. We can't tell which units are compromised and which aren't." "Agreed. We're proceeding to the 47th floor now." Sarah turned to Max. "Find the girls. Take me to them." Max moved with newfound intensity, leading Sarah to a service stairwell concealed behind a decorative panel. As they descended to the 47th floor, Sarah's mind raced through extraction scenarios. 5 victims, all likely drugged, 2 of them against an unknown number of armed hostiles. The odds were not in their favor. The service door opened onto a utility corridor that paralleled the main hallway. Through small ventilation grills, Sarah could glimpse the luxurious main corridor beyond, and the 2 armed guards stationed outside double doors that presumably led to the showroom. "We need a distraction," she whispered to herself. As if in answer, alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Emergency lights pulsed, and an automated voice announced, "Security breach detected. All personnel implement lockdown procedures immediately." Sarah's comm crackled. "Shepard, this is Eagle's Nest. We've triggered their perimeter alarms to create confusion. Multiple security teams are converging on the ground floor. You have maybe 5 minutes before they realize it's a false alarm." "Copy that," Sarah replied, "moving in now." The guards outside the showroom door hesitated, clearly uncertain whether to maintain their posts or respond to the building-wide alert. Their indecision gave Sarah the opening she needed. "Max, disable," she commanded. The Belgian Malinois exploded from the utility corridor like a missile. Before either guard could react, Max had taken the first one down with a precision bite to the forearm, causing him to drop his weapon. Sarah emerged simultaneously, her borrowed sidearm trained on the second guard. "Federal agent! On the ground, now!" The second guard reached for his weapon. Sarah fired once, the shot striking his shoulder. He went down with a cry of pain. Max released the first guard's arm at Sarah's command, maintaining a threatening stance that discouraged any further resistance. Sarah quickly secured both men with zip ties, then used the skeleton key on the showroom doors. The room beyond matched what she'd seen on the security feed: 5 glass enclosures arranged in a semicircle, each containing a teenage girl seated on a minimalist chair. The walls were white, the lighting harsh and clinical despite the luxury furnishings. "U.S. Federal Agent," Sarah announced as she entered, keeping her voice calm and reassuring. "We're here to get you out." None of the girls responded. Their eyes tracked movement, but their expressions remained vacant. Drugged, just as Sarah had feared. "Eagle's Nest, we've secured the primary targets. All 5 victims located alive but drugged. Request immediate medical support for extraction." "Working on it," Michaels responded, tension evident in his voice. "We've got complications. Torres has figured out the alarm was a diversion. He's mobilizing security teams to sweep the upper floors." Sarah quickly assessed the room. The glass enclosures had electronic locks, similar to those at the Elmwood facility. She used the skeleton key on the first one, relieved when the door slid open with a soft hiss. "My name is Sarah," she said gently, approaching the girl inside, a blonde teenager who couldn't be more than 15. "I'm a police officer. We're going to take you somewhere safe." The girl's eyes focused slightly. "Are you real?" Her voice was slurred, her pupils dilated from whatever drugs they'd given her. "I'm real," Sarah assured her, helping the girl to her feet. "Can you walk?" A barely perceptible nod. Sarah worked quickly, freeing the remaining 4 girls from their enclosures. All were in similar states, conscious but heavily sedated, able to follow simple instructions but clearly disoriented. Max circled the group protectively, his posture alert for any threat. When all 5 girls were gathered, Sarah activated her comm again. "Eagle's Nest? Victim secured, but mobility is limited. We need an extraction route with minimal resistance." Static answered her. The comms were being jammed. "Damn it," Sarah muttered. She turned to the girls, forcing confidence into her voice. "We're going to move together, very quietly. Stay close to me and follow my instructions. This is Max. He's going to help keep you safe." As if understanding his introduction, Max moved to the head of the group, positioning himself as their guide and protection. Sarah led them back into the corridor, pausing to retrieve the weapons from the incapacitated guards. The emergency lights still flashed, but the alarms had been silenced, a sign that security was regaining control of the building systems. "This way," Sarah directed, guiding the group toward the service stairwell. Their best hope was to descend to the regular office floors where they might blend with evacuating employees. They made it down 1 flight of stairs before Sarah heard voices below, security teams ascending to search the executive floors. She quickly directed the group back through the door to the 46th floor, finding themselves in what appeared to be a corporate apartment used for visiting executives. "Hide!" she instructed the girls, directing them toward a bedroom. "Stay quiet!" Max suddenly growled, his attention fixed on the main entrance to the apartment. Seconds later, the door burst open. 4 armed security personnel entered, weapons drawn. "Down!" Sarah shouted, pushing the nearest girl behind a sofa as gunfire erupted. Sarah returned fire from behind a kitchen counter, forcing the security team to take cover. Max circled behind them, attacking the rearmost guard with swift efficiency, creating chaos in their formation. The firefight was brief but intense. When it ended, 2 security guards lay wounded, 1 unconscious from Max's attack, and the 4th had retreated into the hallway calling for backup. "We need to move now," Sarah told the terrified girls, gathering them quickly. Stay low. Follow Max. They exited through a service door that connected to an adjacent apartment, then through another to reach a different stairwell. Sarah could hear security teams coordinating through the building, their radio communications echoing in the stairwell. 42nd floor, Sarah decided, leading the group downward. We'll try to reach the emergency evacuation route. As they descended, Sarah's phone vibrated with an incoming message. Somehow, Michaels had bypassed the communication jamming. Helicopter extraction, the message read. Roof, 5 minutes. Sarah redirected the group upward. Change of plan. We're going to the roof, but they'll expect that, one of the more lucid girls protested. That's counting on, Sarah replied grimly. They'll expect us to go down, not up. 3 floors from the roof access, they encountered resistance. 2 guards blocking the stairwell. Sarah engaged them directly, allowing Max to guide the girls through a floor access door while she provided covering fire. When she rejoined the group moments later, they were moving through an executive office space toward a second stairwell on the far side of the floor. Almost there, Sarah encouraged them, noting with concern that 2 of the girls were struggling to keep pace, the drugs in their systems affecting their coordination. The final stairwell to the roof was unguarded. Security had indeed focused their resources downward, expecting an escape attempt through the lower floors. The roof door opened onto blinding morning sunlight and the deafening chop of helicopter blades. An unmarked black helicopter hovered 20 feet above the helipad. Its side door opened to reveal Michaels and 2 tactical agents providing cover fire toward the roof access points. "Run!" Sarah shouted over the noise, guiding the girls toward the waiting helicopter. As they sprinted across the open roof, the door behind them burst open. Captain Torres emerged with Connor Reynolds and 4 armed guards. "Collins!" Torres shouted, his voice nearly lost in the helicopter noise. Sarah turned, positioning herself between the girls and the new threat. Max stood at her side, his body tense and ready. "It's over, Torres," she called back. "Federal agents have the building surrounded. You have no idea what you're interrupting." Torres raised his weapon. "Step away from those assets now." "They're not assets," Sarah replied, her own weapon trained steadily on her former mentor. "They're children." The first girl reached the helicopter, agents pulling her to safety. The second and third followed while Sarah and Max held their position as a living barrier. Torres fired, not at Sarah, but at the helicopter. The pilot took evasive action, temporarily pulling away from the roof edge. "Max, protect!" Sarah commanded. The Belgian Malinois launched forward, crossing the distance to Torres with stunning speed. The captain fired again, but Max's trajectory was too fast, too precise. He struck Torres with the full force of his 80 pounds, knocking the weapon away and taking the man to the ground. In the chaos that followed, Reynolds retreated toward the roof door, while his security team engaged the agents providing cover fire from the helicopter. Sarah focused on getting the remaining 2 girls to safety, half carrying one who could barely walk. As the helicopter maneuvered back into position, she lifted the weakest girl into the waiting arms of an agent. "Max!" she called. "Come!" Her partner disengaged from Torres, who lay unconscious on the rooftop, and sprinted toward the helicopter. Sarah covered his retreat, firing at the security team to keep them pinned down. As Max leapt into the helicopter, Sarah moved to follow and felt white-hot pain tear through her left shoulder. She stumbled, nearly falling to her knees. Through a haze of pain, she saw Connor Reynolds standing by the roof door, a smoking pistol in his hand. His face showed neither anger nor fear, only cold calculation as he took aim for a second shot. Max barked frantically from the helicopter. Sarah forced herself forward, her right hand reaching for the helicopter skid as her left arm hung useless at her side. Reynolds fired again. The bullet struck inches from Sarah's feet. With a final surge of desperate strength, Sarah leapt for the helicopter just as it began to pull away from the roof. Hands grabbed her, pulling her inside as the aircraft banked sharply away from Reynolds' tower. The last thing Sarah saw before the door slid closed was Max pushing past the agents to reach her, his eyes wild with concern. Then darkness closed in, the pain and blood loss finally overwhelming her consciousness, but not before she registered one critical fact. They had done it. All 5 girls were safe. Max had completed the mission he was truly born for, and the Lighthouse had just suffered its first major defeat. Beeping monitors pulled Sarah back to consciousness. She blinked against harsh fluorescent lighting, momentarily disoriented until a familiar weight pressed against her right side. Max lay beside her on the hospital bed, his head resting gently on her uninjured arm, dark eyes watchful and alert despite visible exhaustion. "Hey, partner," she whispered, her throat dry. Max's tail thumped once against the mattress, restrained but unmistakably relieved. "He refused to leave your side," Michael said from a chair beside the bed. "The medical staff tried to remove him twice. After the second time, they gave up and just worked around him." Sarah attempted to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through her left shoulder. "The girls? Safe. All 5 receiving treatment for the drugs in their systems. Physically, they'll recover. And the Lighthouse?" Michael's expression hardened. "That's where things get complicated. Reynolds has vanished. Private jet departed for a non-extradition country 3 hours after the extraction. Torres is in custody but refusing to talk, and we've got jurisdictional warfare breaking out between agencies." Sarah glanced at the TV mounted in the corner of the hospital room, muted but displaying breaking news. The headlines scrolling across the bottom read, "Prominent philanthropist linked to trafficking ring. FBI raid reveals shocking evidence." How long was I out? 18 hours. You lost a lot of blood before we could get you to the safe house medical team. The bullet missed major arteries but shattered your clavicle. Sarah processed this information, stroking Max's fur absently. "So the story's broken." "That's something." "Partially broken," Michaels corrected. "The FBI's official statement acknowledges the trafficking operation and Reynolds' involvement, but makes no mention of police corruption. Internal Affairs is handling that aspect quietly." "Quietly," Sarah repeated, anger flaring. "Meaning what? They'll be allowed to resign with pensions?" "Politics," Michael said simply. "The mayor's concerned about public trust in law enforcement. He wants the corrupt officers prosecuted, but without connecting them publicly to the Lighthouse. That's not acceptable." Sarah swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the pain that shot through her shoulder. Max instantly stood, positioning himself to support her if needed. "Reynolds will re-establish operations somewhere else if the full network isn't exposed. Collins, you need to rest. The doctor said—" "The doctor isn't responsible for those girls' futures." Sarah stood, steadying herself against a wave of dizziness. "Where are my clothes?" Michael sighed, recognizing the futility of arguing. "Closet. But you should know, technically, you're in protective custody. There's a marshal outside your door. To protect me or to contain me?" Michael's silence was answer enough. 20 minutes later, dressed in borrowed clothes with her arm in a sling, Sarah sat in a small conference room adjacent to her hospital room. Max remained at her side while Michaels connected a secure laptop. "Before you do something rashly heroic," he said, typing rapidly, "you should see what we've been working on while you were unconscious." The screen displayed surveillance photos of the Reynolds Tower, financial records, and evidence logs. "We executed simultaneous warrants on 17 properties connected to Reynolds and his foundation. The evidence recovered is substantial, but not enough to take down the entire network," Sarah countered. "No, which is why we need Torres to talk." Michaels pulled up the captain's booking photo. "He's the key to identifying all the corrupt officers and Reynolds' international connections. But he knows if he cooperates, he's a dead man, even in federal custody." Sarah studied the image of her former mentor. "He'll never talk to federal agents, but he might talk to me. That's not happening. You're a witness, not an interrogator. And half the agencies involved think you're a liability because of your personal connection." Sarah leaned forward. "That personal connection is exactly why he'll talk to me. I know things about Torres that aren't in any personnel file, things I could use." Even if that were true, you'd never get clearance. Then don't ask for clearance. Sarah nodded toward the laptop. You said yourself you're operating outside official channels. Where are they holding him? Michaels hesitated, clearly conflicted. FBI field office downtown. Secure holding on the 4th floor. Get me in there. Just 10 minutes with him. And then what? You're still in danger, Collins. Reynolds has resources and connections. He'll send people after you and Max. At the mention of his name, Max sat up straighter, his attention focused on the conversation as if he understood the stakes. Let him try, Sarah replied, her voice cold. We're done hiding. The decision visibly weighed on Michaels before he finally nodded. I can get you in, but whatever happens after that conversation is on you. 3 hours later, Sarah sat across from Captain Daniel Torres in an FBI interrogation room. Max lay at her feet, his eyes never leaving the man who had once been their commanding officer. Torres looked smaller somehow, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He stared at Sarah's sling, then at Max, before finally meeting her gaze. You should be dead, he said flatly. Sorry to disappoint. Sarah placed a file on the table between them. 5 girls rescued. Your operation exposed. Reynolds on the run. Not exactly the outcome you planned. I have nothing to say without my lawyer present. This isn't an official interrogation, Torres. No recording, no observers. Just you and me, and what's left of your conscience, if anything remains. Torres leaned back, a bitter smile twisting his lips. You think I'm going to have some emotional breakdown, confess all my sins to ease my guilty soul? You never understood how the world really works, Collins. I understand perfectly, Sarah countered. I understand that you recruited me specifically because of my record with vulnerable youth. I understand that you paired me with Max, knowing he was part of an experimental program designed to find trafficking victims on command. What I don't understand is why. Torres's eyes shifted to Max, who returned his gaze with unnerving intensity. He was supposed to be controllable. The program guaranteed that the dogs would respond to override commands, that they could be trained to ignore specific locations, specific scent profiles. But Max couldn't be controlled that way, Sarah said. He kept finding victims even when you didn't want him to. The first time it happened, we thought it was a fluke. A rusted lock in an abandoned building where we were holding 3 girls. Max found them during what was supposed to be a routine training exercise. We relocated the girls, disciplined the handler who let him get too close. Then you assigned him to me. Torres nodded slowly. Reynolds thought it was elegant. Give the problematic dog to a promising officer we could groom for the organization. Either Max would eventually respond to your influence and become controllable, or you'd have to eliminate both of us, Sarah finished. Business, Torres said simply. Nothing personal. Sarah felt Max tense at her feet, responding to her controlled anger. 5 teenage girls being sold to the highest bidder is very personal, Torres. So are the other victims. Dozens? Hundreds? How many over the years? For the first time, Torres looked uncomfortable. I was only involved in security operations. The merchandise wasn't my department. Merchandise, Sarah repeated, disgust evident in her voice. They're children, with families searching for them, futures stolen from them. Don't lecture me about morality, Collins. The world runs on supply and demand. Reynolds just recognized the market. And what was your price? What made it worth betraying everything that badge stands for? Torres leaned forward, his voice dropping. You have no idea what the Lighthouse really is. Reynolds is just the Atlanta operation. The network extends to every major city in the country, with connections to governments worldwide. You think rescuing 5 girls makes a difference? They've already been replaced. Then help us shut it down completely. Names, locations, contacts, everything you know. A harsh laugh escaped Torres. You still don't get it. There is no shutting it down. Cut off 1 head, 2 more appear. The only currency that matters in this world is power, and the Lighthouse has more than you can imagine. Sarah opened the file, spreading photographs across the table. The girls they'd rescued, now safe in hospital beds. They matter. Their lives matter. And I'm betting somewhere beneath all that cynicism, you remember when you believed that too. Something flickered in Torres's eyes. Not remorse exactly, but recognition. I can't help you, Collins, even if I wanted to. I'm a dead man the moment I cooperate. You're a dead man anyway, Sarah replied bluntly. Reynolds won't leave a liability like you alive, no matter what you do or don't say. The only question is whether you take the truth to your grave or use it to make some small amends. Torres stared at the photographs for a long moment. What are you offering? Witness protection, a new identity, not freedom. You'll serve time, but in a secure facility where Reynolds can't reach you. And what do you get out of this? Revenge? Sarah shook her head. Justice. For those girls, and all the others still out there. Max shifted position, rising to his feet as he sensed the conversation reaching its critical point. He moved to Sarah's side, his presence a silent reminder of what they'd already accomplished together. Torres looked from Sarah to Max, then back to the photographs. The hierarchy works through cutouts. Reynolds reports to a council of 6. We call them the directors. I only know 2 by name, but I can identify the others by their operations. Sarah slid a notepad across the table. Start writing. For the next hour, Torres detailed the entire operation. Names, locations, offshore accounts, corrupt officials across multiple agencies. As the pages filled, Sarah saw the full scope of the Lighthouse emerge. A trafficking network that had operated in plain sight for over a decade, protected by wealth and influence. When Torres finally set down the pen, his expression had changed, not redeemed but resigned. This won't save me, you know. They have people everywhere. Probably, Sarah agreed, gathering the pages. But it gives those girls a fighting chance. As she stood to leave, Torres called after her. Collins, there's one more thing you should know. He nodded toward Max. The program that created him, it wasn't just about trafficking detection. The dogs were engineered for something else originally. Sarah paused. What? Military application, identifying enemy combatants hiding among civilians based on specific stress markers and chemical signatures. Max and the others were designed as living lie detectors, able to sense deception, fear, aggression. When that program was discontinued, the technology was repurposed for trafficking detection. Sarah looked down at her partner with new understanding. All those times Max had alerted to situations that seemed safe or refused to leave areas that appeared clear, he had been detecting something beyond her human perception. Why tell me this now? Torres shrugged. Because it won't matter soon. Reynolds knows what Max can do, what all those dogs can do. That's why he'll never stop hunting him. The technology is too valuable. Outside the interrogation room, Sarah handed the pages to Michaels, who had been waiting in the monitoring room. This is everything. The entire network, from street level to the top. Torres gave us the directors, the council that runs the Lighthouse internationally. Michaels scanned the pages, his expression growing increasingly grave. These names, senators, judges, a deputy director at Homeland Security. Collins, this is bigger than we thought. I know, and Reynolds is still out there, probably already working to rebuild. We'll put together a task force. With this information, we can coordinate simultaneous raids across multiple jurisdictions. Sarah nodded absently, her mind already elsewhere. Torres said something about Max, about the program that created him, that he was originally designed for military applications to detect specific biomarkers. That tracks with what our intelligence uncovered, Michaels confirmed. The dogs were engineered to detect minute changes in human biochemistry, stress hormones, pheromones, even subtle alterations in body temperature. In essence, they can sense human emotional states with near-perfect accuracy. Sarah crouched beside Max, meeting his intelligent gaze. You've always known, haven't you, what people are hiding, what they're feeling. That's how you found those girls when no one else could. Max pressed his muzzle against her hand, his brown eyes holding hers with an intelligence that transcended training. You know what this means, Michael said quietly. As long as Max exists, Reynolds and his organization will never stop coming after him. The technology that created him is too valuable. Then we'll have to find Reynolds first, Sarah replied, rising to her feet, before he can disappear completely. He's already gone, Collins. Private jet to Dubai, then likely onto a non-extradition country with his resources intact. No, Sarah shook her head. He's too arrogant for that. Reynolds built his empire here. He won't abandon it completely, not without securing his assets and eliminating his liabilities. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we use what we have that he wants. Sarah's hand rested on Max's head. We draw him out. Michael's expression shifted to alarm. Absolutely not. We are not using you and Max as bait. We won't be bait, Sarah countered. We'll be hunters. For once, Reynolds will be the one reacting to us, instead of the other way around. Before Michaels could protest further, his phone buzzed with an urgent alert. He checked the message, his face darkening. What is it? Sarah asked. The marshals transporting Torres to federal holding just reported in. Their vehicle was ambushed en route. Torres is dead. Professional hit, military precision. Sarah felt cold certainty settle in her chest. Reynolds is still in Atlanta. He's tying up loose ends before he leaves. All the more reason for you to go into protective custody immediately. Both of you. Sarah exchanged a look with Max, a silent communication born of years of partnership. That's not happening. Reynolds will keep coming, keep hunting. The only way this ends is if we end it, permanently. Michael studied her face, recognizing the unshakable resolve there. What's your plan? Reynolds thinks he's the predator, Sarah said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. It's time he learned what it feels like to be the prey. Outside the FBI building, storm clouds gathered over Atlanta once more. Sarah Collins and her canine partner stood at the entrance, looking out at the city where they had discovered evil lurking behind wealth and power. Tomorrow would bring the final hunt, their most dangerous confrontation yet. But for the first time since this case began, they would be the ones setting the trap. Darkness cloaked the abandoned factory on Atlanta's riverfront, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the night sky. Rain fell in sheets, washing away footprints almost as quickly as they formed in the mud. Inside, Sarah Collins checked her weapon one final time, the movement awkward with her injured shoulder. All units in position, Michael's voice confirmed through her earpiece. Thermal imaging shows 3 heat signatures in the main office, 2 more patrolling the perimeter. Acknowledged, Sarah replied softly. No one moves until my signal. The trap had been carefully laid over the previous 48 hours. After Torres' assassination, they had deliberately leaked information through compromised channels, suggesting that one of the rescued girls had revealed the location of the Lighthouse's financial records before being sedated. Records that could expose not just Reynolds, but all 6 directors. The bait was too valuable for Reynolds to ignore, especially with his empire crumbling around him. Federal agencies had frozen his known assets, raided his properties, and issued international warrants. His only hope for rebuilding lay in containing the damage, which meant securing any evidence and eliminating witnesses. Max sat perfectly still beside Sarah, his breathing controlled despite the tension radiating through his muscular frame. His tactical vest held a GPS tracker and a miniature camera that transmitted to Michael's command post half a mile away. The warehouse had been chosen specifically for its limited entry points and clear sight lines, a controlled environment where they could finally confront Reynolds on their terms. Movement at the north entrance, Michaels reported. Black SUV approaching. Sarah checked her watch. 1:47 a.m. Right on schedule. She signaled Max with a hand gesture, and they moved silently from their concealed position to the catwalk overlooking the main floor. Below, Reynolds' security team had already begun sweeping the building, 4 men with tactical gear and submachine guns, moving with military precision. "Collins, be advised," Michaels warned. "These aren't standard security. Thermal is showing military-grade equipment and weapons." "Noted," Sarah whispered, tracking their movement through the darkness. The plan was precise. Allow Reynolds to enter, let his team clear the building, then trap them once they believed the location was secure. Sarah and Max would remain hidden until Reynolds himself was confirmed on site. Max suddenly tensed beside her, his attention locked on the main entrance. Sarah didn't need to ask what he had detected. Her partner's unique abilities now made perfect sense. He could literally sense Reynolds's approach, the specific biochemical signature that set the man apart from his security detail. The main doors opened, and Connor Reynolds entered the abandoned factory. Gone was the polished philanthropist in bespoke suits. This Reynolds wore tactical gear similar to his men, though his carried an unmistakable air of expense, even in its utility. A pistol with custom grips hung at his hip. "Clear the upper levels again," he ordered, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I want confirmation that we're alone." Two guards broke off, heading toward the stairs that would bring them to the catwalk. Sarah tapped Max twice on his shoulder, the signal to retreat to their secondary position. They slipped through a maintenance doorway moments before flashlight beams swept the catwalk where they had been hiding. Years of training operations in similar environments had taught them how to move through darkness without sound, using the building's architecture to mask their movement. "Sir, upper level clear," one of the guards reported after completing his sweep. Reynolds nodded, then gestured toward what had once been the factory manager's office. "Secure the target location." Sarah watched through a grated ventilation duct as Reynolds' men converged on the office, exactly where they had planted the bait. Inside, a locked case contained what appeared to be financial ledgers and hard drives. In reality, it held only trackable decoys and enough legitimate evidence to keep Reynolds occupied while the trap closed around him. "Target acquired," the lead security operative announced, emerging from the office with the case. "Appears uncompromised." Reynolds approached, his posture betraying eagerness, despite his controlled expression. "Open it." As the case lock disengaged with a metallic click, Sarah activated her radio. "All units, execute." The factory erupted in coordinated chaos. FBI tactical teams breached from 4 entry points simultaneously, filling the space with shouts of "Federal agents" and "On the ground now." Disorienting flashbangs echoed through the building, their brilliant white light momentarily turning night to day. Reynolds' security team responded with immediate gunfire, taking cover behind concrete pillars and abandoned equipment. The firefight was intense, but brief. Outnumbered and surrounded, 3 of Reynolds' men went down in the first exchange, but Reynolds himself had vanished. "He's running," Sarah reported, already moving. "East exit. Max and I are in pursuit." "Collins, wait for backup," Michaels ordered. Sarah ignored the command, following Max as he tracked Reynolds through the factory's labyrinthine back corridors. Her partner moved with absolute certainty, following not visual clues but the invisible chemical trail that Reynolds couldn't hide. They emerged into the rain to see Reynolds racing toward a secondary vehicle hidden behind the building, a motorcycle designed for rapid escape. Max accelerated, eating up the distance between them with powerful strides. "Federal agent!" Sarah shouted above the storm. "Stop or I will fire." Reynolds turned, his face contorted with rage, and drew his weapon. He fired twice in rapid succession, wild shots that missed their mark as he continued backing toward the motorcycle. Sarah took aim, but before she could fire, Max launched forward in a blur of focused aggression. Reynolds swung his weapon toward the charging dog, but Max was too fast, too precisely trained. He struck Reynolds' gun arm with devastating force, the impact driving the man to the ground as Max's jaws locked around his wrist. Reynolds screamed, a sound of both pain and incandescent fury. He struck at Max with his free hand, landing a solid blow to the dog's ribs, but Max held firm, exactly as he'd been trained to do. Sarah closed the distance, her own weapon trained on Reynolds's head. "Don't move. It's over." For a moment it seemed Reynolds would comply. Then with shocking speed, he produced a second weapon from an ankle holster with his free hand. Sarah fired once, The bullet struck Reynolds in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Max released his arm and retreated to Sarah's side, following his training perfectly. "I said it's over," Sarah repeated, approaching cautiously. Reynolds lay on his back in the mud, rain washing over his face, mingling with blood from his shoulder wound, but remarkably, inexplicably, he was laughing. "You still don't understand, do you?" he gasped through the pain. "This doesn't end with me. The Lighthouse will rebuild. The directors will simply replace me." "The directors are already in custody," Sarah informed him, satisfaction coloring her voice despite her professional demeanor. "Your entire network is being dismantled as we speak. Torres gave us everything before your assassins reached him." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Reynolds' face. "You're lying." "No, she's not," Michael said, emerging from the factory with his team. "International warrants are being executed right now in 7 countries. Your offshore accounts have been frozen. The Lighthouse is finished." Reynolds's expression transformed. The urbane philanthropist completely stripped away to reveal the predator beneath. "That dog!" he snarled, glaring at Max. "Do you have any idea what he's worth? The technology that created him could have changed everything. Could have made us unstoppable. That's why you'll never understand what makes him special," Sarah replied, keeping her weapon trained on Reynolds as FBI agents moved in to secure him. "It wasn't the technology. It was his choice to resist his programming, to protect instead of exploit." As agents hauled Reynolds to his feet and recited his rights, he fixed Sarah with a final venomous stare. "This isn't justice, Collins. This is just your moment. It won't last." Sarah holstered her weapon, placing her hand on Max's head. "Maybe not, but it's enough for today." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the sunlit courtyard of the newly established Safe Harbor Center, a rehabilitation facility for trafficking victims, funded by assets seized from Reynolds's criminal empire. The building had once been one of the Lighthouse's processing centers, now transformed into a place of healing. Max sat beside her, his coat gleaming in the sunshine, a new tactical vest emblazoned with the FBI's K9 Division logo, replacing his Atlanta PD equipment. After the Reynolds case, both Sarah and Max had been recruited by Michaels for a specialized task force dedicated to dismantling trafficking networks nationwide. "Officer Collins." Sarah turned to see Zoe Richardson, the first girl they had rescued from Reynolds' tower. Though still thin, her eyes had lost the vacant, drugged expression, replaced by cautious hope. "It's Agent Collins now," Sarah corrected gently. "But you can call me Sarah." Zoe nodded, then knelt to Max's level. "Can I pet him?" "Of course. He remembers you." As if confirming this, Max moved forward to gently press his muzzle against Zoe's hand. The girl smiled, perhaps her first genuine smile since her ordeal began. "The therapist said I should thank the people who helped me," Zoe said, stroking Max's head. "So, thank you, both of you." "You're very brave," Sarah told her. "How are you settling in here?" "It's okay. The nightmares are still bad, but they said that's normal." Zoe's gaze drifted to the other survivors in the courtyard, some from Reynolds' operation, others rescued in the coordinated international raids that had followed. "Will he really stay in prison forever?" "Yes," Sarah assured her. "Reynolds will never hurt anyone again." The trial had been swift and conclusive. With evidence from Torres and testimony from multiple victims, Reynolds had been sentenced to multiple life terms without possibility of parole. More importantly, the case had exposed corruption at every level of law enforcement, leading to a nationwide reckoning within police departments. "Good." Zoe hesitated, then added, "They want me to testify against some of the others." "I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. That takes incredible courage," Sarah said. "Max and I will be there if you need us." After Zoe returned to her therapy group, Michaels joined Sarah by the courtyard fountain. "The final report just came in," he said without preamble. "All 6 directors in custody, 48 victims rescued internationally, 117 arrests across 3 continents. And the corrupt officers? Internal investigations ongoing in 26 departments. The Atlanta cleanup is nearly complete. 17 officers facing charges, including 3 deputy chiefs." Sarah nodded, watching Max as he observed the courtyard with alert vigilance, even in this moment of relative peace. And the program that created him? Officially disbanded, all records secured by the Department of Defense. Michaels hesitated. They wanted to study him, you know, to understand why he resisted the override training when the others didn't. What did you tell them? That some things can't be measured in a laboratory, and that separating you two would be both cruel and stupid. Sarah smiled for perhaps the first time since the case began. Thank you. They stood in companionable silence, watching the survivors in the courtyard, young women reclaiming their lives, step by painful step. What happens now? Sarah finally asked. Now? Michaels considered the question. Now we build something better. The task force is approved for nationwide operations. We've already identified 3 potential trafficking networks using the Lighthouse model. And Max, officially designated as the prototype for a new K9 program, one built on ethical training and handler bonding, not override commands and control. The technology that created him might have been designed for exploitation, but he's shown us it can be used for something better. Sarah crouched beside her partner, meeting his intelligent gaze. In those brown eyes, she saw not just a highly trained K9, but a being who had made choices, who had resisted his programming to follow a deeper instinct for justice and protection. What do you say, Max? Ready for a new mission? Max's response was immediate and unmistakable. Alert posture, focused attention, the subtle shift in energy that had always told Sarah he was ready for whatever challenge came next. As the sun set over Atlanta, Sarah Collins and her extraordinary partner walked out of the Safe Harbor Center side by side. Behind them, the building's new sign caught the golden light, from darkness into light, the promise of a new beginning, not just for the survivors within its walls, but for all those yet to be found. Reynolds had been wrong. The technology hadn't made Max special. What made him extraordinary was something no laboratory could create: the capacity to choose protection over control, compassion over exploitation. The very qualities that had led him to bark relentlessly at a dark house on a power outage map, refusing to leave until someone heard his warning. Justice had been served. And somewhere in the city, another Max, one of his littermates perhaps, or another dog from the program, might be making the same choice, alerting to danger that others couldn't see, leading their handler toward those who needed saving. The work would continue. But for tonight, Sarah and Max had earned their rest, together as they had always been, together as they would remain.